Hello there, John Coturillo here, the counsellor of your listener. Thank you for joining me for this episode. As per usual, thank you to everyone who makes it possible for me to live my vision every day, be you a client who allows me the privilege of entering into your life to help you with your goals, or a supporter or listener of the podcast. Thank you to you all. Today I'm going to be discussing my best techniques to make housekeeping more effective and more efficient. Now, before I begin, this is not advice in any way, it's a perspective, okay? Nobody knows your assets and your house like you do. This is a primer for you to conduct your own research and consultation with professionals on what is safe and appropriate in your household. Now, housekeeping isn't exciting for many, but let's be honest with ourselves. How often do we get annoyed that a task isn't done, or that the house is too untidy, that there's too much dust settling on surfaces, that it's not organised as much as we'd like it to be, and then these problems, as they compound, get in the way of us actually living our lives in our homes. For many people, it's far too often. In fact, for most people, it seems to be far too often. Also, how many people have a house full of items, such as products that they've used once and then they've never used ever again? Or they buy more than they actually need and their house is just full of redundancies. Yes, there's something to be said for planning ahead, but how often does it actually get in the way? Most people are capable of holding a good housework routine. They just haven't learned an effective approach. So to help get you thinking about an effective approach, I'm going to describe my approach to housekeeping. The first part of this is to write a to-do list with every single task that I need to do on a regular basis included. Okay, every task, regardless of how small it may seem, it's included in the list. And then that list divides the task between the days of the week. And then every week, when a particular day comes, I will complete all the tasks on that day. Every week, without exception, I stick to it. Okay, I don't wait months for a problem to compound and then I try to do all my tasks on the one day. Every week, I complete the same tasks on the same day. Why do I do this? It's not because of obsession. It doesn't constitute an obsession. That's not the appropriate word. The mind likes structure, and you would be surprised how much time you waste looking for tasks that need doing and getting distracted by other tasks when you don't have a routine. The routine must be established and it must be written, because that's most likely to provide you with the efficiency and the order that you need. Now, why do I do certain tasks every week? Because cleaning becomes more of a problem when it's not done regularly. When you clean surfaces regularly, you lessen the chances for dirt and other types of contaminants to build up, harden, and become more difficult to remove. So every week, I regularly, with the same techniques, clean my floors, my kitchen surfaces, including bench tops, but also tile splashbacks in the areas beside my stove where grease can build up from cooking, the filters on my range hoods, my shower, my sinks. On a regular basis, I also clean the washing machine according to the directions in the instruction manual. I also dust down every surface where dust may settle, including the tops of air conditioners and the tops of blinds and the tops of light fittings. By doing that on a regular basis, the cleaning takes me relatively little time because a quick wipe will eliminate any contaminants on the surface. Now, I don't need that many cleaning products. I'm efficient with my choices. One of my main cleaning sprays is a formula that's mainly water with some eucalyptus and clove oil. And for most instances in which I need to clean dirt off a surface, unless there's a reason not to, this is my main cleaning product for a number of reasons. It deodorizes, provides a pleasant scent. The eucalyptus oil is effective at removing dirt and grease and is also a mild disinfectant. The clove oil is good for wet areas because it helps discourage the development of mold. I minimize the usage of harsh chemicals by using this formula. But there are certain situations, for example, when cleaning my toilet surfaces, in which I do need a stronger grade of disinfection, and that's when I use hospital-grade disinfectant. But I only use that in instances where that hygiene is absolutely essential. What's also important to understand about hospital-grade disinfectant is I would never try to use it to remove the dirt. I would try to remove visible contaminants first, using usually some kind of disposable cloth, and then once the surface was as clean as it could be, then I would finish with the hospital grade disinfectant, because removing the substance that actually contains the pathogens helps to disinfect, but I'm certainly not a biologist, so take that with a grain of salt. I also have isopropyl rubbing alcohol. I am a fanatic of this particular product. The isocol is for instances in which I need to clean sensitive surfaces, but the other types of cleaners might either be damaging to them or potentially leave a residue. It comes in a spray bottle as well, so I use it for cleaning certain electronic items. I use it as a glass cleaner, and it's also my hand sanitizer. Now, for most cleaning purposes, I use washable microfiber cloths and dusting cloths because they can be cleaned in one of my weekly washing loads, and therefore I save money on buying disposable cloths, and I also save the environment by minimizing my wastage. What I tend to do is use my cloths in such a way that I can use them to the maximum extent without cross-contaminating them before I have to wash them. And I do that by wiping clean surfaces first. So for example, I have a microfiber cloth in my kitchen, and at the end of every day I just dampen it and wipe down the surfaces of my kitchen. But then every week when it comes to clean my kitchen and bathroom, I'll use that same cloth to clean every surface except with my eucalyptus and clove spray. Then I use it to clean the sinks, and then I use it to clean the bathtub. And I always clean the cleaner surfaces, that is to say my other kitchen surfaces first, because that minimizes contaminants from the sinks then finding their way onto other surfaces. And then I put that in the wash, and I use a separate cloth to clean my shower so as not to cross-contaminate. Also, when I dust my house every week, I dust all the surfaces, and then I can also use that same cloth later in the week to dust the inside of my car, and I can also use it to dust the floor before having to wash it. And before I put it into the washing machine, I vacuum the dust off of it to minimize the dust that gets caught in the washing machine. Now, there are certain surfaces that I would call sensitive, that is to say, that are most likely to cause any problem with hygiene, and these I would pay attention to keeping clean. So, for example, for any prescription glasses or sunglasses, I would clean them at least weekly. I clean my sunglasses weekly. I rinse them under warm water with a lens cloth to remove any contaminants, and then I clean them using a lens cleaner. I clean my earbuds regularly with some isocol alcohol. I wipe down my computer regularly. I clean my phone screen. I clean my watch regularly. I only have to do it once a week, and it doesn't take that long. I also plan the days on which I wash my linen because that allows for maximum efficiency. So for example, on a regular basis, I will wash 3 separate loads throughout the week, once on one day and then 2 on another day. And it's arranged in such a way that it keeps the laundry basket as empty as it can be, and I can wash multiple items at once, so I'm not having to do too many loads and use more water and more electricity than I have to. It also means that if I'm drying a large number of items on the rack at once, they all dry at once, and I can then pack away those items without having to have the rack too full for too long. There are also regular maintenance tasks that many people probably neglect to do. There are points about your house that you should be checking on a regular basis. For example, you should be testing your smoke alarms regularly to make sure that they work. If you have a fire extinguisher which contains dry powder, then the instruction manual might state that you have to regularly shake the extinguisher in order to make sure that the powder remains loose. Hot water units often have a pressure release valve, and the instruction manual will often say to release that valve on a regular basis to ensure that not too much pressure builds up within it. If you have certain types of tap, there may be a filter inside the tap that helps to keep contaminants out of the water that's emitted, and there may be a tool included with the tap that allows you to remove that filter and then rinse it. That may need to be cleaned regularly. I read in the news once that the inside of your shower head may be a breeding ground for fungus, bacteria, and similar pathogens. That may need to be cleaned, and the person who was mentioned in that article actually gave a guide in which they said to submerge the shower head in vinegar in order to clean it. I personally use eucalyptus and clove oil for the reasons I described, but the takeaway message here is that it's wise to clean a shower head regularly. What's also advisable is that you test your car lights regularly to make sure they're working. So, for example, I might have somebody look at the back and front of my car as I'm switching the lights on and off to make sure that they're working. I also assign time every week to maintain my technology. So, for example, I discard old emails, I discard old text on my phone, I check that all my applications are up to date. I set aside time in the week to do that so that I'm not constantly distracted by it, and I can focus on what's most important on the other days. The next part of this approach is to do with weekly shopping. I'd be willing to predict that people tend to spend more time in the supermarket than they absolutely have to. So here's my approach to weekly shopping. First of all, I have a master list of every item in my house that I need on a regular basis. Every week, on the day that I go shopping, just before I leave, I will systematically check each item on my master list and decide how much and how many I need. And I may buy some spares, but generally speaking, I try to not over-purchase. And especially when it comes to perishables like fruit and vegetables, I try to buy only as many as I can use until I next go shopping, because if I buy too many of them, there's a chance that they'll spoil, and that has happened to me even when I minimize it. So it's important for me to minimize wastage. not just for financial purposes, but also because I don't consider it particularly wise to be wasting something as precious as food. When I go to the supermarket, I go straight to the sections that have those items on the list. I don't browse, I don't give in to the impulse to purchase treats. I just go straight to those items and I take as many as I need, and then I move on to the next item. What I also do is I investigate what products are best early. When I know that I may need something, I investigate what's the best brand, what's the best type, what do I need to know, and then I know what products are available, and sometimes the most expensive product is not the best for my purposes. So I'll find out what product does exactly what I need to do at the most efficient cost. What I also do, and this is something that's highly subjective, and again, I would never advise you to do this yourself, I would always consult with a health professional, but I have a meal plan. Okay, I don't have any particular physical health problems, thankfully, but I have a meal plan, so on any given day of the week, I know exactly what I need to cook, and I make sure that over the course of the week, my meal plan considers and accounts for all of my dietary needs. That saves time. It means that I don't have to waste time thinking about what to cook, and it ensures over the course of a week, because I stick to the routine, that I'm taking in sufficient nutrients. Now, the next part of my philosophy pertains to product choice. When I purchase products, I like to purchase ones that are multi-purpose, so that I minimize the number of products I have while maximizing the utility of each. So as I mentioned, the Isocol rubbing alcohol is an excellent product because I can use it as a hand sanitizer, I can use it to clean my glass, I can use it to clean electronic surfaces. Perhaps unusually, olive oil is a multi-purpose product because not only can it be used to lubricate pots and pans, I can use it in cooking, I can use it as dressing, and also, as it happens, my stovetop being electric, after I've washed it, needs to be coated in oil in order to avoid rust, and the olive oil does that. My body wash acts as my regular hand wash, my regular body wash, and I use it in place of shampoo. I don't have enough hair to justify shampoo, but that one product fulfills all those needs for me. So my bathroom is not full of bottles that are half full. When I'm deciding on what products to purchase, I know what features I need, and I try to find the reputation of the product that I'm considering. I try to investigate how long it's likely to last, if it's an asset, and whether it's repairable or not. That way, I'm more likely to be satisfied with it in the long term, and I'm less likely to have to replace it too often because it's of poor quality. Often, I'm also happy to consider used products in instances where it's safe to do so. Often, purchasing used doesn't sacrifice on the utility of the product, and you save money in the long term. I'll give you an example. The chair in which I'm currently sitting right now as I'm recording this was available to me free of charge. I found it, somebody advertised it online and they were willing to give it to me free of charge. Now, something like a chair, I would always advise you to check that it's safe first, so again, take that with a grain of salt. But me taking that risk for myself, I was perfectly satisfied with it. And I'm minimizing purchasing new products and potentially contributing to landfill by taking used products. What I also love doing is learning to modify or repair other items. So for example, I had an old shower caddy that was made out of wire, and it couldn't quite fit my bottle of body wash in it. So I modified it and expanded it so that it could, instead of having to buy a new one. I obtained an old writing desk, and it was perfectly suitable as a workbench. I attached my vise to it, and now it's a workbench. My bookshelf had some missing screws that made it impossible to install one of the shelves. So I took some bolts that I had, inserted them in the right place, used some padding to ensure it was the right thickness, and now that shelf is in place and is perfectly functional. The final part of my philosophy pertains to trying to keep the environment as low maintenance and sustainable as possible. As examples, I try to keep my items in closed areas, that is to say cupboards and drawers, rather than out on shelves. That way they're not collecting dust or getting lost. And inside cupboards and on shelves, I try to use organisers such as tubs and drawers in order to keep items together to make them easier to find. Something that's worth considering is that it's tempting to choose features based on what looks or feels nice and what's likely to increase the value of the property in the long term, but also consider practicality. So for example, hard floors are often easier to clean than carpet, and if you've ever dropped broken glass on carpet, you'll know how difficult it is to find all the shards sometimes. Hard floor is less likely to have that problem. It's easier to mop, it's less likely to accumulate dust because the dust can't get embedded in it. I personally prefer roller blinds as opposed to curtains or Venetians because there's less opportunity for dust to settle on them and it's easier to clean. There are some particular tips that I use when it comes to recycling. For example, when I buy a loaf of bread, I don't put the entire loaf in the refrigerator. I keep used bread bags and I will separate slices across a number of different bags, and then I'll keep one bag in the refrigerator and then the other two in the freezer, and I take them out as I need to keep the bread as fresh as possible. Then I'll also use those bags to separate meat when I buy meat in a tray. That makes it easier for me to remove it from the freezer in the morning and put it on a plate to put it in the refrigerator so that it can defrost by dinner time. I can then dispose of those bags, but I've used those old brick bags for multiple purposes before I've disposed of them. I keep old plastic bags and use them as bin bags. If I've been using hot water in the kitchen and I need a glass of cold water, I don't just let the warm water run down the drain until it gets cold. I'll put the kettle underneath the tap and I'll put that warm water into the kettle so that when I need to boil the kettle, I have that water to use and it hasn't been wasted by running down the drain. I keep old paper if it's not sensitive, and I print on the back of it, or I use it for messy tasks. For example, if I'm painting something or gluing something, I put that old paper on my workbench so that I don't get my workbench dirty. What I also regularly do is, if there are chemicals that I need to dispose of, I will take them to a Detox Your Home event. I'm not sponsored by Detox Your Home or the organisers, but those events are run at recycling stations regularly throughout the year, and people can take their chemicals to those events to get recycled. I don't simply throw them down the drain or throw them in the rubbish. That's dangerous. I dispose of them properly. What I also try to do with clothing that's damaged and that wouldn't be accepted by an opportunity shop is I try to recycle it. There are places that will recycle damaged clothing. One such place is Zara. Again, I'm not sponsored by Zara, I just appreciate that they recycle all damaged clothing. Often Zara outlets have a bin for damaged clothing that can be recycled. So thank you for joining me for this episode. As per usual, do not take anything you heard today as advice of what you should or shouldn't do. Conduct your own research, get professional consultation if you need to, but I hope that after listening to my philosophy, you're perhaps thinking about how you can make your own contributions to make your own housework routine easier and be more sustainable and kinder to the environment. If you have any ideas about what you'd like to hear discussed on the program, or you'd like to be a guest, or you'd like to be a collaborator, please feel free to contact me. I love hearing from my audience. And until next time, take care.